you've ever been on the receiving end of passive aggressive behavior, oh goodness, that is frustrating. It can really end relationships. It can make you second guess if you want to be in this person's life. But what if you're the one that's doing it? Why are you being passive aggressive? Well, that's what we're going to discuss today, so you can start working on it. Today, it is all about passive aggression. Check it out. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Experience. It's your girl, Lori, and man, am I excited that you are here. The next podcast that you hear after this one will be my birthday, and I'm really excited. Another trip around the sun, and it's springtime. It's almost springing here. It's not quite springing. It's giving you a little taste, and it's like, not really, psych, so it's just part of the spring process, and it's about growing, right? That's what spring is. It's, you planted stuff, you've worked on stuff. Now it's about blooming. And so that's going to go on today's topic about self-reflection. It's very important to understand your own behavior and not put that on somebody else. Not say this person did this, not because I'm passive aggressive because of this. We're not going to do that. And self-reflection is your biggest tool, okay? Because it forces you to look within. No distractions, no TV, no social media, nothing. Just you and your thoughts. And some people are really resistant in doing that. But until you are not resistant, you're going to keep trying to repeat the cycle and keep looking for fast fixes. So with that being said, over on Patreon, there is going to be a great worksheet that's going to force you inward to really address and see if you are demonstrating passive aggressive behavior. It is not going to change because you decide to be passive aggressive and somebody's going to go right into that web. It's not how it's going to work. So you're going to have to really focus hard there. And so if that's your jam, you can pop over to Patreon, go to patreon.com/the positivity experience, or click the link anywhere that you are getting this podcast right now. So I really want to jump into passive aggressive behavior because it is frustrating. Okay, so we need to know first and foremost where it comes from. It comes from a multitude of places. So I'm going to address just a few. And some of you are going to be like, oh my God, that's common sense. And some of you are going to be like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so you got to have an open mind about yourself. Again, it can also be other people. And I can promise you, you are going to run into passive aggressive people almost every day. And it's not absorbing it and taking that on. So why do people demonstrate passive aggressive behavior? Well, number one, it's an avoidance of direct conflict. That's right. For you to say, let's think of something together. I didn't like I statements, always I statements. I didn't like, or I felt frustrated when you gave me a backhanded compliment. Okay. That's directly addressing it. I was uncomfortable when that happened. Why people avoid conflict in general is because they don't know the outcome that they're going to get from the other person. And that's life. We all see things differently. We all perceive things differently. Think about this. It's a little off topic, but if you've ever heard somebody say to you, well, I said sorry. You're like, okay. And it's almost like, well, you said sorry, so let's move on. Well, that's because you're ready to move on. That doesn't mean I'm ready to move on. And you can absolutely forgive somebody and never let them back into your life. So it's not that that's so much passive aggressive, but it is you being able to say, okay, is this in my best and highest good? How is this person going to react? You don't know. And it's unimportant when you don't know. So what? You're allowed to address it. A lot of reasons that people avoid that conflict is because they're afraid of what that other person's going to say. Is that other person going to, quote unquote, cut you off? Are they going to get angry? Okay, it doesn't matter. And they might. And they have the right to do that. See, a lot of times with fear of conflict, you're looking at it and going, okay, well, if I do this, then what if they come back at me hot? They might. So you have to say, it's important that I get my communication together and understand that even if I articulate it in the best possible way, direct, assertive way that I can, doesn't mean that it's going to be received. And you will avoid that because you're like, well, what if I lose this relationship? Well, what if they get mad? Okay, you're going to have to pick a side here for yourself. You're either going to be open in your communication. And if you are, and then somebody kind of reacts in a certain way, don't take that personal. They have the right to react as they are. That doesn't mean stop doing it, right? There's also, like I said, there's repercussions. That's another reason why people avoid conflict. They're like, oh God, if I avoid conflict, then this is going to happen. But then what if this happens? And you start playing that what if game, and it becomes extremely problematic. And you also try too hard to be polite. You're like, well, I really want to address the situation, but I really want to be polite in it. You got to stop doing that too. Okay, you got to stop doing that too, because boundaries are not necessarily considered polite. You addressing behaviors are not necessarily considered polite, and you're going to have to get through that. And maybe that needs to have its own topic. Maybe we need to really dive into a fear of conflict, fear of rejection, right? Because those two things go together. Fear of rejection and fear of avoidance of conflict, or avoidance of conflict, is they kind of go hand in hand. Right? So passive aggressive behavior can come from that, and it definitely does. Number 2 is that powerless feeling. I feel powerless in their response. Yes, because you are. That's correct. I feel powerless because in the past, when I've said something, it was shut down, right? So I was powerless then. But remember, that's a reason, not an excuse. So when you're bringing things into this life today, all right, you got to be really careful. Yes, those were your past experiences. Yes, those were that was real to you, but you can't keep bringing that fear now. And the reality is you're powerless to the unknown, but that's actually powerful because you're powerless. You don't want to be in power all the time. I know you think you do. You do not. You absolutely, without a doubt, do not. Imagine if you knew what, in your mind, you think that this is good, but imagine if you knew every response somebody was going to make, everything that was going to happen in a relationship, all of these things, and you think, yes, I would love that. You say that now, but you would be very lonely because nobody would even want to hang out with you. They'd be like, oh God, I don't know. She's all in my stuff. You think you would, but you wouldn't. So it becomes passive aggressive, and we'll talk about what those behaviors actually look like. And again, I know that you've witnessed it. I know that you've been on the other end of it, but it's also important to really reflect on yourself. The third one to that is lack of communication. I mean, just communication skills. If you do not have communication skills, and a lot of us really weren't taught that. So my son studied communications in college. And so he said, Mom, I learned so much, well, on his own too, but I learned so much that I was never taught. And it's not like you sit down with somebody and go, hi, little Jimmy, I'm going to tell you about communication skills. And you can also say it to them, but unless they're willing to absorb it and hear it and put it into practice, it really doesn't matter, like at all. And so the lack of communication skills will come into play here. Because if you don't know how to protect yourself from not taking it personal, then we need to really work on communication. Are you going to run into everybody who has good communication skills? You're not. You're not. And that's the frustrating part. You'll notice this on your healing journey. I say this to every client I have from day one. You will lose people on this journey. Don't get sad about it. They were in your life for a reason, season, and definitely not a lifetime. And they are not going to always stay because sometimes they don't like direct communication. You think, well, why isn't everybody communicating? Because not everybody wants to pause, listen to the other person. You have your personalization bias. You have your past things that you're holding on to. So what happens is when you sit in that space and you're trying to hear someone, you kind of shut down the moment that whatever's being said isn't in alignment with you. And then you just stop listening. You see this a lot in politics, religion, and things like that. Okay. So the lack of communication skills is where you want to sit. Again, don't expect, this is where expectations is going to be like it's either going to be your downfall or it's going to really expand for you. Be okay with how they receive it and be okay with how they respond. Period. Don't absorb it. That's not you. But to communicate is to use I statements. Big thing that people run into is you did this. You make me feel. You should have done. You. No, it's me. I. Always I statements. See, you have to remember no human on this planet can make you react. You choose to react. And yes, it could be emotional dysregulation. Yes, it could be bipolar. Yes, it could be anxiety. We understand that there's a reason behind it, but that's what you want to focus on. And you'll notice some people will it's called getting your goat. That's what we used to call it. Some people will try to get your goat. Like they're going to try to purposefully pick that scab until it goes raw. And then you respond and then you're the problem, right? You're the problem. That's why you don't give the reaction, especially when people are passive aggressive. Now you can call it the behavior, but not like you're an idiot, you're being passive aggressive. But a boundary to that would be like, are you trying to say something directly to me? Because it's coming off passive aggressive. Directly point it out. Would you like to say something to me? But hey, is there something going on? Like, I'm feeling some kind of way. And it's coming off as very passive aggressive. So you're not saying you're passive aggressive. That's how you're perceiving it. They may not react to that very well because people don't like to have things pointed out about themselves. They want it to always be somebody else. I know you have these people in your life where it's everybody else but them, but yet they're the common denominator, and it could be you. You could be the common denominator. That's okay. If it's you, that's okay because you can work on that. If it's them, you got to accept it just as it is. Now, number 4 with that is cultural and family. Like, it's very familial. So a lot of times in certain cultures and certain families, you weren't allowed to be direct, or they didn't know how to be direct. So then they're passive aggressive. So if they're passive aggressive, then they're not going to like your passive aggression, and it's going to create this cycle. Or you had said something directly, it wasn't received very well, and that's okay. This is that confidence, this is the acceptability that, hey, people can respond as they want. But sometimes you take that and you're like, oh my God, I'm not allowed to communicate my feelings, right? But you got to start somewhere. You got to start now, and you do not wait to feel ready. Stop doing that. Okay, I got all the skills I need. I got all the tools. Okay, now I can put it into play. That's not what we're going to do. It's going to be so problematic for you because you're going to overthink the entire place. Okay, you're going to everything in your head. It's a place, and you're going to rethink the whole thing. Okay. Ooh, number 5 is probably one of my favorites to talk about, and that is control and manipulation. That's right. A lot of times most of the time, people will use passive aggressive actions to manipulate and to control a situation. Let me give you an example of that. And I think I did last week, so I want to kind of reiterate that again. Somebody comes to your house every Friday. It's your friend. She comes over to the house, or they come over to the house. You do a little plucking of the weeds. You sit down, you have some wine. It's kind of a fun time. And you kind of really rely. It's made so where now you kind of rely on her. You know, your back's bothering you. So she comes over, she does all this for you. It's really nice. You know, you guys are doing good. Well, she feels some kind of way because she got left out, which is already her own insecurity, but whatever. So she feels some kind of way, or she wasn't included in on something. So what is she going to do? I'm not going to go over there next week and weed that garden. Oh, I'm not going to do that. So instead of saying, hey, you know what? Like, I felt really weird when you went out the other day. I felt very, like, not included. Now that person can say, well, I understand that. I'm sorry you feel that way. If they're sorry, they don't have to apologize. But if they're sorry you feel that way, they're allowed to say that. And then say, but, say, however, when I'm hanging out with these people, I really prefer to do it by myself. Right? They don't have to love it, all that stuff. But that's not a communication that happens. So they go, oh yeah? All right, watch this. I'm going to withhold things. Actually, you'll see this a lot, believe it or not, in romantic relationships where somebody will withhold sex. I'm going to withhold sex. You'll definitely see this if you're a grandparent and you and the kids are getting upset with each other, something's happening. Now they're going to withhold those grandkids. That's a whole other topic. I'm going to be like, do not fight that. Let it be what it is. But that's passive aggressive behavior. It's manipulation. It is control. You are trying to control the narrative by withholding something. I'm going to withhold this. And let me tell you what else it does, the manipulation piece of it. It will almost attempt to put you on the defense. Okay. So then they can deny being aggressive because you're being aggressive, right? So if they're coming in and they're being passive aggressive and you're feeding it, see, this is why you don't feed it. You call it out right on the carpet. Hey, this feels a little uncomfortable to me. Do you want to say something directly to me? Because this feels very passive aggressive, right? Okay. We already know not a lot of people are going to do that. But let's say something happens and they're really picking that scab and you're kind of staying around, you're putting yourself in the position to keep listening to it. And then you get like, you explode. Like you're just like, you freak out about it. And now you're getting more aggressive. Now they go, oh my God, calm down. What are you doing? This is scary. Okay. No, they did not make you do that. You did that on your own. You chose to do that on your own because you stayed and you kept trying to make it make sense. But what will happen is, and it's very gaslighting, right? Is they'll say, oh my God, it's you. You're the problem. It's not me. I didn't do that. I wasn't nearly as aggressive. And that's the thing about passive aggressive people. They're trying really hard to fly just underneath that radar screen so they can come off still as like, hey, I'm trying to help or I'm trying to be nice, versus the other way around. So they give you just enough and then they pull back and then they give you just enough. It's a little level of like breadcrumbing, a little different. And that's why they will blame you, right? Control and manipulation, definitely manipulation is blaming. This is your fault. You did this. You became aggressive. Again, that's not just with passive aggressive behavior. That's with anything, right? You'll see that a lot in narcissism where something's going along and then that person starts to get a little gutsy. They're really starting to work on themselves. They kind of stand up. And then all of a sudden they're like, what is wrong with you? Like, oh, listen, you are really changing. You're like, yeah, we're supposed to change. Leaves change, seasons change. You're supposed to change. So you have to remember that those are the behaviors, right? So you got to recognize the behavior in other people. Don't get frustrated. Imagine this is your mom or somebody really close to you, your partner, your sister, whomever. And this seems to be a steady type of response. Their go-to is passive aggression. Why are you hanging out with these people? Why are you communicating with them? Do not tell me it's because it's your mom. Do not tell me it's because it's your sister. Don't do that. They are relatives. Relatives and family are different. I told you this. Family cannot be relatives, boy. And relatives do not necessarily mean that they're family. So you have to remember that because when you identify it, it can be sarcasm. Now I'm sarcastic that's like a big personality of me. I'm like, look at you. Yeah. I mean, I say it in this house. Oh my God. You'd be like, what is wrong with you people in this house? Paul and I are very sarcastic. That's not necessarily what I mean. That's like fun banter, but sarcasm is, and this is a passive aggressive thing. So think of it like this. Okay. I'm gonna give you an example. You and your friend are going to go to a restaurant and it's a cute restaurant. And so you're getting a little cuted up. You're like, yeah. And then you come out and you can tell that they don't really like your dress. And by the way, it doesn't matter. Wear whatever dress you want. They don't have to love it. They don't have to like it. They can hate it. Doesn't matter. But instead of going, and again, not unsolicited, if you go, hey, how does this look? A direct response would be like, well, I don't think I would wear that because I don't know that would look good on me. It's not really my style or my color, but for you, are you comfortable in it? Right? Because and then if they go, why you don't like it? Not really. I don't like it. But if you like it, I love it for you. That's direct. Passive aggressive would be like, oh, that's an interesting top. Oh yeah, I love this top. Yeah, I can't wait to wear it. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I hope it works out for you. Passive aggressive. That's not so much sarcasm, but passive aggressive. So sarcasm would more or less be like, oh, that looks great on you. Like, look at that. Your legs look like chicken legs, right? Especially if you don't have that kind of relationship. I have that relationship with a lot of people because it doesn't come from malice. But for people, because I'm also very direct. So if I have an issue, I'll tell you. So it's more banter. So you have to kind of determine that on yourself, like on your own, if you're being sarcastic. Not everybody's going to understand it. So you're going to have to be sarcastic with the people just who are around you. Backhanded compliments are a massive, and I said massive, part of passive aggressive behavior. So like that, okay, well, I hope that dress works out for you. Ooh, I mean, it looks good. It just... I don't know. I just don't know how it's going to land. Okay, so wait, does it look good or does it not? You'll see this a lot in apologies. Well, I'm sorry, but blah, 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 blah. But it's like always these, like, you're never direct to the point. It's always like this round way. And then you don't really know what they're saying. Backhanded compliments. Oh my God, you look so good for your age. Serious passive aggressive behavior. You look so good, period. Not for your age, not anything else. When people add in things, that's very passive aggressive. Oh my God, you look good for your age. No, you just look good. Oh, I love how that smells when you're in the sun. It could be like suntan lotion. I love how that smells when you're in the sun. You don't even have to go down that road. So backhanded compliments are a massive piece of it. Apologies, like I said, without anything. And procrastination on agreed tasks. If you're procrastinating on agreed tasks, it's time for the person who you agreed with to have a discussion with you. So if you agree on something, you say, hey, it was so funny. What show was I watching? It was The Office. Was it The Office? No, it was something else. And somebody was pretending to like need space because they didn't want to go paint something or help somebody move. So they were pretending as though, wow, my back, I just need some time, like all of this avoidance and procrastination on it. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll get to it. That is very passive aggressive. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And so you'll have to understand that people will respond very snarky. Oh, and under your breath tone. Okay. Well, that's just great. I mean, I don't understand. I try to do everything around here and you can't even do 5 seconds, but sure. Go ahead and take a rest. That entire thing's passive aggressive. Anytime you mutter under your breath or, you're kind of like, okay. Right. It kind of combines the sarcasm with the like talking under your breath. And I know that you've seen and heard people do that. Like they're like, well, that's just fine. I can't believe that. Such an idiot. I'd never do that. And you're like, what? Nothing. Right. Because here's the thing too. Passive aggressive people really don't like to be called out on the carpet because then it's a deer in the headlights type look. It's, yeah, honestly, you see this in social media all the time. People live behind their keyboards. I can talk, I can say whatever I want because sure, you could block me or you could say something smart back, but you don't really know me. Where back in the day, you had to like look somebody in their face and say, yeah, I'm mad at you or I don't really like you. See, you take that as rejection, but wouldn't somebody rather know that from the get? I don't need you to be nice to me in my face and stab me in the back. Just don't be nice to me. Just tell me you don't like me. I'm okay with that too. You struggle with it if you have a low self-esteem though. So if someone were to come to you and be like, I don't like you, I don't like how this works, you might take it some kind of way. But try not to take that stuff on personally. Now, if you're dealing with somebody else who is presenting this, do not get activated. You might feel activated. Do not respond out of it. Do not go after that and be like, well, you're just being passive aggressive and you're doing this all the time. Just be like, okay, well, you know what? I am going to bow out right now because this feels very passive aggressive to me. This feels passive aggressive to me, not you're passive aggressive, not you're making me passive aggressive. This feels passive aggressive to me. And then walk away. Stay calm. Stay calm. People are going to yell. They're going to scream because they don't have emotional regulation. They don't understand it. So again, two people are arguing. Nobody's being heard. I'm loud. I'm louder. I'm loud. I'm louder. I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. Nobody's listening to anything. So you're going to have to stay calm. And like I said, address it directly. Address it directly. I feel uncomfortable with this conversation because I feel as though it has some passive aggressive undertones. Do you want to say something directly to me? Now, a lot of times they'll be like, and then sometimes they may address it. Good. Give them that space to be able to address it. But you're going to have to be okay with how that lands backwards onto you. Right? And so you'll see this a lot with defensiveness. You'll see this with people trying to understand something to make it fit into their narrative. Oh God, you'll see this a lot too. We're in an election year. Holy cow. You'll see some assertiveness. You will see some aggression. But you will also see a lot of passive aggressive behavior within your family. I don't mean on a global scale. This was huge when COVID first hit. Huge. Oh my God, huge. People were direct and they were also passive. Right? So always remember that a passive aggressive comment is like, okay, that's fine. But I guess I'll just do it all like I do it all in this house. And you're like, bro, that's passive aggressive, right? So if you ask somebody, hey, can you put this in the sink? Let's say they live in your house. Hey, can you put this in the sink? Yeah, I'll do it in a second. And realistically, they can do it in a second. But let's say they said, yeah, I will in a minute. And then the passive aggressive person goes, well, just don't worry about it. I do it anyway. Well, let me take it. Here, do you want to rest? Do you want me to make you a sandwich? Do you want a comforter? Are you sleepy? Every bit of that is passive aggressive, right? It's not assertive. It's very unstable. And those are the people, I didn't say they're unstable. I said that action is unstable. And they might be unstable. So you have to ask yourself, what am I willing to tolerate with this? Because what you're not going to do is yell and argue with them into changing this behavior. And if you know that you've been dealing with said sister, whatever, and she's always passive aggressive, she's just constantly thinking, why are you getting upset? She's been this way. We're not new here. So especially when you come into a situation and you know what you're dealing with and you're expecting it to be different and you keep subjecting yourself to that and now you're upset, that's not them at all. So you got to remember, and then you got to be real careful to not go passive aggressive back. Okay? You got to be careful of that. Because let's pretend that I'm the person who has the glass. Okay? Hey, you need to put please put the glass in the thing. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it in a little bit. And then you come in talking about, well, I'll just do it. I'm so sorry. Do you want to get comfortable? Do you want to do this? See, I'm going to feed into it. I'll be like, well, actually, that comforter sounds amazing. Actually, yeah, you're going to make me a sandwich. Good. I'm starving. Right? You can do it that way, right? That's not necessarily passive aggressive. That's meeting them at that level. Or you can also address it by saying, I do not like how this conversation is going, and I do not allow myself to be spoken to this way. So I think that we need to take a little breather, and I'm going to walk out this door. Right? So you can do it anyway, because you don't necessarily want to match passive aggressive with passive aggressive. But if you, sometimes people get even more irritated, so you have to be careful. And sometimes it shuts people down. Oh my God, you're going to make me a sandwich? Thank God. Thank God. Right? So you got to be careful. You got to know who you're dealing with. But essentially what I'd love for you to do is be like, hey, this is very passive aggressive. I feel as though this is very passive aggressive and I will not continue this conversation. And let's say you live with the people and I'm going to walk out this door and I will be back. Because you walk out, sometimes it can be like, oh, you're like leaving, but you can say, yeah, and I'll be back. And then you can also say, but when I come back, I do not want to continue this conversation in this tone. I don't want to continue the conversation in this tone. So we can either put a pin in it or let's talk about it tomorrow. Don't worry about how they respond to it because this isn't about them. Okay? Boundaries is going to be your best friend. Like I just said, that was a boundary that I established. Obviously, you have something that you want to say to me. I am not comfortable with how this conversation is going. I am taking it as very passive aggressive and it makes me uncomfortable. And I'm going to walk out that door and I'll be back. The boundary is I'm not engaging. I'm not going to feed the bear. I'm not going to give them an inch and go, well, I'm sorry. And now you're trying to explain it and you're trying to, no, we're not doing any of that. You got to set the boundary for yourself on what you're willing to put forward. Okay, you got it. You got to ask yourself that because you're going to have to be honest with yourself. But do not get activated because in your mind you feel like they're winning and they're not winning. Because you're not going to just say a few words and all of a sudden they're not going to be passive aggressive anymore. And you sitting there and saying, you're an idiot, passive. Okay, why are you dealing with these people? Why? Distance can be your best friend. Distance can be your best friend. And just gray rock the hell out of these people. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, cool. But again, when you call them out on it, oh, hey, I noticed that you said something really weird just now about my top. It's fine if you don't like it. Just tell me you don't like it. I mean, no, I don't really like it. But no. You don't have to say but. You don't like it. I'm still wearing the shirt, but I can respect that you don't like it. Because then you're promoting by kind of carrying them through a little bit. You're promoting communication skills. They ain't gonna like it all the time. But you're promoting that. You're demonstrating, hey, it's not good to talk right now. For either of us, I'm going to step out for a minute. In turn, it's showing them. Does that mean that all of a sudden they're going to do it and it's going to be life is going to be great? No, not necessarily. So now with all of that being said, what do you find within yourself? Are you giving backhanded compliments? Are you telling somebody they look good for their age? Are you saying anything like that? Are you muttering? Do you mutter under your breath? Well, I guess that's fine. I'll just do that because are you doing that? Because see, now we know a little bit, I've told you a little bit on how to deal with people, but you're also going to have to be willing and able and ready to not respond. Sometimes they're going to have to get in the last word. Okay. But once you address it, you're setting a tone for what you will tolerate because what you will tolerate will continue. So if you say, well, I don't understand why this is still happening because you're tolerating it. Remember, nothing changes until you change. Nothing. So you have to remember that when you go into it and don't allow that to happen from yourself too. And again, it could be something within your childhood. Maybe direct communication was frowned upon. Maybe it just was met with like really hostile personality. So then you start going, well, I don't like that. But I mean, sorry, I guess I'll do it anyway. Like, you kind of pick that up sometimes when you're growing up, and people haven't really kind of embraced that kind of communication skill. So you have to be aware that this doesn't become a habit, because it might have already been a habit and you might find yourself doing that. And being super defensive can create an enormous amount of passive aggressive behavior, right? Because we have a whole thing on defensiveness, and I'll tackle it again, because I cannot tell you the countless amount of people who have slid in my DMs and text me too, but email me and said, hey, I'm still having a hard time with my defensiveness. Like, I understand it's my ego. I understand it's my insecurity. It's just stressful. And, I'm going to tell you, like I tell them, it takes time. You're not going to listen to one podcast, 10 podcasts, 4 books, 16 journals. It's not just going to fix itself overnight. You're going to have to be consistent. Okay. And the consistency is going to be your best friend too, because that also kind of routes that mindset behind I need to feel ready or I need it fast. It really does. It helps reset that mindset. And when it does that, now you're able to see it from a different perspective. But showing up for yourself with a consistency when you don't want to do it builds confidence. Building confidence creates lack of passive aggressive behavior. Understanding that they don't have to like your direct response. It's fine. Maybe they're going to distance from you. Maybe that's the end of that relationship. It is what it is. Then you go into attachment and codependency on, well, I don't want to lose that person. Well, why not? Maybe that's what needs to happen. But you have to check yourself, because at the end of the day, if you're constantly, quote unquote, losing people because of your communication, well, then it isn't everybody else either. Okay. So I think now's a great time to pop over to Patreon and really go through that worksheet. I like to go through it so you understand it and kind of lead into it a little bit, because when you become self-aware and you start to make these changes, you're not worried about other people making changes. It's not like, well, I'm better with communication. They're not. Well, again, the person who's healing, unfortunately, kind of always has to drag the person a little bit, like to demonstrate, but don't force them. Don't force that behavior. But leading by example is good. And then it is 100% up to them what they want to do with that information. So just remember, don't get upset with people. You are in full control on how you respond to the passive aggressive behavior. Directly address it. And if you have something to say to somebody, directly say it, but don't expect that it's just going to be received with open arms. Check it out.